front. Quickly, say up. So chapter 6, we started talking about chapter 6 last time. And what did we learn about? What did we learn about? A pen in chapter 6?
Files.
Files, very well. Here, front row. So chapter 6, we talked about files, very well. So last time, we learned a little bit about files. We learned how we can open, here we go. We learned how we can open files. And we learned that we have how many modes we can open the file in? 3 modes. Read, write, or append. And then we learned about the write method. And what is special about the write method is that the write method only accepts a string. This is very important. It only accepts a string. And I told you back then that make sure every time you write a new record to your file, regardless, what are your records? Grades, names of students, what are they? Every time you add a new record to your file, the record must end with what? So that they don't stick to each other.
Yes.
Very good. With a new line character. So every time you write a new record, you must add a new line character at the end. And of course, do not forget to close the file. Type. Now what is this? How is this?
Read method.
Reading the data from the file. Now, when reading data from file, number one, you have to open the file in which mode? In R mode, in read mode. Very good. Otherwise, the method is not going to work. Type. Then, we have the read method and then the read line method. The read method, it's a file object method that reads the entire file contents into memory. It reads everything, the entire content of the file into one string. Not very useful, really. And we rarely use the read methods, okay? So it reads everything as one string. Because then you have one string of all of the records and then you have to dissect it and you have to manipulate the string so much. Like, of course, it only works if the file has been opened for reading and the contents are returned as a string. The more interesting method, the more useful method is which one? What is the name again here? Read line. The read line method. It's a file object method that reads a line from a file. Now this is important. The line is returned as a string including a new line character. Remember a new line character? Okay. So again, the read line method reads a line from the file including the new line character. So what do you have to do with it to remove the new line character? How can you remove the new line character from the end of a string? لا end equals هاي في البرنت مالي دخل في البرنت ماني قاعد أطبع. I want to change the value of this string. I want to remove the new line character from the end. Which method was it? Strip. Very good. Remember from chapter 8, strip methods remove white space characters from the sides, from the ends of a string. R strip from the right side. Type. So this is the read line method. Now how does the read line method work? You basically open the file. Again, in read mode, Abdullah. You open the file in read mode. Now, we have what we call a read position. It's basically a cursor here. The read position, when you open the file in read mode, it starts at the beginning. The read line method, you call the read line method, it reads the first line and the new line character, returns it. Now what is the read position? Moves to the next line. Call the read line method again, here we go, the read line method reads the next line with including the new line character and returns it, so the read position moves to the next line, okay? This goes on until we have no more data in the file. But before I give you examples on both the read and the read line methods, let's go through these slides. I have already covered everything here from last time. Concatenating a new line to and stripping it from a string. In most cases, data items written to a file are values referenced by variables in your code. It is usually necessary to concatenate a new line character to the data before writing. Of course, most of the time you have to do this. Otherwise, the data is just going to be stuck to each other. How can we do that? Using the plus operator, concatenation, in the argument of the write method. So you have to concatenate with a new line before you write it, and I've already given you examples on this last time. Now when you read it, you need to remove the new line character. صح ولا لا? So you read it. In many cases, you need to remove the new line character from the string after it is read from a file. What do you do? R strip goes on the right side. You can use strip عادي. Strip will remove it from both sides. We don't have anything from the left side, so it doesn't matter. R strip method, string method that strips the specific characters from the end of the string. طيب. Again, we have already talked about this before. When you open the file with the W mode, if the file already exists, what will happen to the file? It will be overwritten. Original data are gone. Now, if the file already exists and you open it in append mode, the original data is still there? Yes, yes. If the file exists, it is not erased in append mode, and if it does not exist, it is created. In append mode, the data is written to the file at the end of the current contents. Type. Writing and reading numeric data. Before you can write a number to a file, you have to convert it to what? يعني convert it to a string using which function? The str function. طيب, when you read it from the file, you read it as a string. Now how can you convert it to an integer or a float? Int and float. Here we go. So numbers must be converted to strings before they are written to a file using, of course, the str function. Numbers that are read from a text file, they are read as strings. So what do you have to do now? You convert it to either int or float, of course, depending. So they must be converted to a numeric type in order to perform mathematical operations. You can use int and float functions to convert the string to a numeric value. So nothing is really new here. The last thing that I'm going to talk about before I jump to PyCharm is using loops. Can I use loops to process files? Yes, you actually have to. Why? Files typically are used to hold large amounts of data, most of the time. Yani you have hundreds, if not thousands of lines of data inside a file. So you basically, most of the time, you need a loop to read from or also write to a file. Type. Do you usually know how many lines of data do you have in a file? Do you know most of the time? No, of course you don't. So often the number of items stored in a file is unknown. طيب, what if I want to read each line in a file? How am I going to know? How am I going to know that the file is done? There is no more data. The read line method uses an empty string as a sentinel when end of file is reached. So the read line method will read line by line. Until when? Until it reaches the end of the file. Like, what does this mean? What is it going to read at the end of the file? An empty string. So as soon as the read line method returns an empty string, you know that we have reached the end of the file. So you can, in a while loop, say something like this. While line is not equal an empty string. What is line? The line that was read by the read line method. As long as the read line method does not return an empty string, this means that there are still more lines to process in the file. And I'll give you an example of this in a second. Can we use a for loop? Yes, Python is very flexible. So we can even use a for loop. Here we go. Python allows the programmer to write a for loop that automatically reads lines in a file and stops when end of file. You don't even need the read line method here. You can say for, then whatever variable for each line, for each grade, for each name, whatever variable name. For line and whatever variable for your file. This will loop once over each line in the file. The loop iterates once over each line in the file. So you don't even need the read line method using a for loop. Then you do whatever you need to do, of course, in the for. Right. Let's jump to PyCharm now. Now I'm going to give an example on the read method first. Let's delete this for now. And I want this. Okay, so here we go. Right. Remember the grades file from last time? Okay? This is the grades file from last time. Let's have some data in there, something like this. Again, simple data. 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, here you go. Okay? These are the numbers that I have in the grades.txt file. Now this example is about which method? The read method. So you create a new file, read method example. Okay. Read, meaning I need to open the file in read mode. So I'm just going to name it something like grades مثلا underscore file. Open the name of the file, which is grades.txt. And then the mode is which mode? R. Very good. There we go. Now the file is ready so that we can read data from it. Right. Now what? I'm giving you simple examples that we can move from there. I can print everything that was returned by the read method. So grades file dot read. When you're done, of course, do not forget to close the file. So grades file dot close. There we go. Okay? Grades file dot read reads everything in the file as one long string. That's it. It returns everything as one long string. So yeah, if I run this, what's going to be printed? Look at the file. What's going to be printed? All of them, just like this. Here we go, one long string. So run, and here we go. Okay? Questions here? We don't really use the read method, yani. We rarely use the read method. Depends. It depends. Right, now an example on the read line method. Yalla, new file. Read line method example. Or read line example. Read line first example, because we will have several examples. Right. Again, I'm opening the file in read mode. I'm opening the file in read mode. Now, instead of, again, I'm just going to print the lines. So grades file dot read line. And then print it. Right? I'm going to do this again. So here, the read line method is going to return what? Which value? Which value? So again, I open the file. The read line method is going to return which value? Read line. 10, very good. 10 and the new line character. So the read position starts from here. It returns the first line with the new line character, then moves here. Type read line again. What is it going to return? 20, very good. Read line again, what is it going to return? 30, very good. As soon as you close the file, خلاص, the read position resets, goes back to the beginning. طيب, let's run this and see what happens. So run. Look at this. Why do you have blank lines here? Backslash n. And what? If it's only backslash n, then 10 backslash n here. Then I'm supposed to be here. So why do I have a blank line? What does the print function add by default? Doesn't add a space by default.
Extra line.
An extra new line. صح ولا لا? It also adds a new line. So not only 10 comes with a new line, also the print function adds a new line. That's why we have a blank line here. فاهمين علي؟ فاهمين why we have? طيب, that's why, remember what we said? We have to strip. We have to strip the data so that we don't end up with this new line. So grades file dot read line dot strip, like this. There we go. Read line returns a string. This string, strip it. The same for this one as well. The same for this one. Okay? Now when you run it, خلاص ال 10 راح تجينا زي ما هي بدون النيو لاين. وال 20 نفس الشيء. There we go. There we go. No blank lines in the middle. Questions? Questions so far? Any questions? Okay. طيب. Now the loops. Okay, let's say مثلا. Now listen, do you know what happens with files and programming in general? What do we do with this data? Most of the time, we read the data into a list. That's what we do. خلاص, حط الداتا كلها في list, then do whatever you want. Grades, you can calculate the sum, the average, whatever it is, you want to update them. Okay? So most of the time we start by creating a list from the data in our file. Hi Sima, on this table quickly. Yeah, let's hurry up. Okay, so an example using the while loop with my file, with the data of my file. Okay. We are going to use a while loop, then we are going to do the same thing but with a for loop. What am I going to do? I am going to create a list and populate it, add all of the grades from this file, okay? Now since they are grades, do I want them to be strings or numbers? Numbers. So what do I need to do before I add them to the list? Very good. Convert them to int values. Good, good. Type. Here we go. Let me remove this. Now, before I open my file, or after, عادي create your list first. So something like grades underscore list. And here we go. I have my empty list. Type. Now, I open my file. Read the first line. So line is grades file dot read line. And don't forget to remove the new line character. So dot r strip. Okay? Read the first line. Now, using a while loop, check while line is not equal to an empty string. Here we go. As long as we still have lines to read from the file, okay, go ahead and add the value to the list. So grades list dot append mean line على طول ولا end of line? End of line. Here we go. And so that we don't end up with an infinite loop, يلا read the next line. So line is grades file dot read line dot r string. Close the file. Now you can process your list. Do whatever you like. For me, I'm just going to print it, okay? For you, this is a very small part of a big system. So you're probably wanting to calculate the sum or the average or something. Yeah, print the list, and here we go. So again, I created an empty list. I opened my file in read mode. I read the first line, and make sure to remove the new line from it. Now, as long as the line is not, okay, so this will read the first line, and here 10. Is 10 empty string, is it? No, so this will go inside. Okay, append, end of 10, حطه في الليست. يلا read the next line. Now the next line is 20. Go back here. Is 20 empty string? No, go inside. Here we go. Okay? This goes on until we read the last line, اللي هو 70. طيب, read 70. 70 is not an empty string. Go inside, add it. Read the next line. Do we have anything after 70? No, we don't have anything after 70. So we go back here. Is an empty string not equal to an empty string? False. This will exit the loop. As soon as we reach the end, we exit the loop. Close the file, print the grades. فهمتوها؟ فاهمينها؟ Is it clear? طيب, let's run this and see. Run. Here we go. 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60. طيب. Can we do this with a for loop? So we're going to do the same example. Again, we are creating a list. We are populating this list, but using a for loop. For loop is even easier in Python in this case. Okay. So again, I create the list. I open my file in read mode. Now, let me remove all of this. With a for loop, you don't even need the read line method. You can just simply say for line or grade or whatever in grades file. Here we go. For each line in grades file, this will loop through the file, one iteration per line. Now, grades file, or grades list, sorry, grades list dot append what? Line, end of what? Of line dot strip or dot r strip, strip. We have a new line only from one side, but عاد strip تشيله من الجهتين, expand شيء من الجهة الثانية, no problem. Here we go. See, 2 lines only. For each line in grades file, grades list dot append, end of line dot strip. Strip the new line first, then to convert it to end, and then put it in the list. list. You're done, close the file, then process your data. Here I'm only printing the list. Right? There we go. Questions? Questions? Is it clear, everyone? What are you doing, Dr. Masina? This table? Yeah. طيب. Any questions so far about the while loop or the for loop? طيب, very well. Do I have another example? Okay, we can have another example with the records. طيب. Now, processing records. Now the example I have given you so far, the records are simple. Each record is basically the grade, that's it. One record, one grade, and that's it. What's a record? Set of data that describes one item. A single piece of data within a record is called a field. طيب, what can, let me give an example of a record. We can have مثلا a file that stores مثلا the details of students. For each student, there we go, for each item, for each student, we have one record. Like, a record can be something like, and this is something that you have to think of as a programmer. We always start the records with the most unique value. What is the most unique value that can describe a student? ID, excellent, ID. Their name, is it unique? No, lots of students share names. So most of the time you start the record with the ID, which is the student ID in this case. Now, the ID is a field in the student record. Type. After the ID, now you need a separator to separate the fields. Most of the time we put commas. But here you have to think. The separator also should be unique. What does this mean? The separator should not appear as part of the data inside another field. Understand what I'm saying? If you are going to use comma, you cannot have commas inside any field as part of the data. Some people use commas in their data. So they use مثلا semicolon to separate the fields, or colon, or sometimes they use a hashtag or add character. Again, all of this depends. If you are also having the email of the student as a field in your record, can you use the add character to be a separator? No. Here you go, because add is part of the email. طيب, so let's say مثلا ID, and then I use commas to separate the fields. يلا, comma. The next field can be the student name. The next comma. The next field can be the student major, comma. The next field can be the student GPA, etc. Here we go. When you are done with a record, with a complete record, new line. Here we go. New line now. The next record is for a new student. And it goes on and on and on like that until you end your file. So this is a very simple example of a record. We write records to sequential access files by writing the fields one after the other. And the fields, the values of these fields, you can get them from the user, you can get them from another file. You just put the separator between them, you concatenate them with the separator. Issue a separator. Most of the time it's a comma, sometimes it's not. Again, this depends. And you add a new line at the end. That's it. And here you go, you are writing one record at a time. Then, when you read the record from a sequential access file by reading each field until the record is complete. And I will give you an example on this in a second. Type. Look at this. In slide 21, this is important. When working with records, it is also important to be able to type add records. I'm going to give examples on adding records and displaying records. However, the rest, searching for a specific record, modifying and deleting records, we don't have time because it takes some time for these examples, okay? Now, what I need you to do is to study this from your book. You must study this from the book. You already have the basics. All of this is extra for me. You already have the basics. It's just, how are we going to use the write, the read method to do this? You understand? But you already have everything that you need to be able to do this. Okay? So make sure there is an example in your book. It's a long example, but it shows you how to do all of these things. طيب. Now, let's jump to pie chart. Let's create a file with some records. Again, I'm going to use simple data. طيب. Okay. I'm going to, okay, so in this example, I'm going to create some student records. Okay? In the file, students.txt. Does the file exist? Do I have students.txt here? No, okay. So, I only need my main function. I'm going to say something like students underscore file, open, and then the file name is students.txt. And the mode is what? I'm going to create it. So the mode is W. Yes, there you go. Again, the values in each record can be obtained from the user. But I'm giving you simple examples. So, I can say something like students file dot write. Here we go. Let's start with the first record. Again, I'm starting with the ID. Again, to make things simpler, I'm just using 3 numbers here. 1, 2, 3. Comma. This is the first field. Comma. Then the student's name, Ahmed maybe. Comma. Then maybe their grade, 91. And that's it. Yeah, let's keep it simple. Now, at the end of the record, what should I have? Backslash. N. Very good. Yeah, another record. Students file. Dot write. Okay. Let's say مثلا 456, comma, Muna, comma, 97. Backslash N. Another record. Student file dot write 789 Maha and 95 backslash N. You're done with your file? Yes. Close the file. Dot close. Okay, run. Let's see now. Here you go. This is students.txt. Open it. Here we go. I have here 3 records of data. 1, 2, 3, Ahmed and 91, 4, 5, 6, 1, 97, 7, 8, 9, Maha and 90. Very well. And this is how I can add records to a file. Very simple. Again, the values can be obtained from the user. You just have to add the commas and the new line at the end. Questions so far? طيب. Now, let's read those records from the file, and maybe we can print them in a nice way. We can say something like Ahmed's ID is 1, 2, 3, and their grade is 91. Something like that, for each of them. Okay, how can I do that? So again, this example is about reading records and displaying them. Again, I'm going to open the file, but in this time in which mode? Very good. Fine. Now, the easiest way to do this is I'm going to process all of the records is using a for loop. So for line in students file, for each line in students file. Fine. Line is going to take each line every time the loop or the iteration, every time we start the next iteration. My question is, now line is this one, is this line. How can I extract the data from this string?
There's another for you.
Huh?
Another for you.
طيب. Then you look for the comma.
Yeah.
There's an easier way. It is, you can do that, but there is an easier way. Then you have to keep track of what's before the comma and what's after the comma. Good thinking. But there is an easier way. There is a method that can extract data from the string. Huh? Yes, it can separate it. What was the? Now I say that's for the split. Very good, excellent. The split method. Remember the split method? The split method takes a string, splits it using a separator. Which is the separator in this case? The comma. And then returns a list that has the data based on this separation. Meaning, it will return a list of 1 to 3 at which index? 0. Ahmed at which index? 1. And 91 at which index? 2. Here we go. Here we go. So, for line in student's file, now I want the list. So what can I say? I can say something like student list line dot split using the comma. Here we go. Line is going to be each line. Split it using the comma. Now I have a list that has the ID first, then the name, then the grade. Type good. I'm not done yet. Now I need to print it the nice way. Here we go. Print using an F string. I want the student name first. Where is the student name? At which index? 1. Very good. 0, 1. So the value of student list at index 1. This is the name. And I want an apostrophe. How can I put an apostrophe now? Backslash. Then here we go. Single quote. So مثلا Ahmed, so we go S, ID is, then again, the value of student list at which index? 0. The ID is at index 0. Type, space, and their grade is student list at which index? 2. 0, 1, 2. Full stop. There we go. Type. Let's run this. Run. Oh, what's going on here? Why do we have a new line here? Someone's ID is 1, 2, 3, and their grade is 91, then new line, then full stop. Why? Why? We didn't? We didn't strip. Very good. So here, for each line in student's file, line is read with the new line. When we split it by comma, صح? So, in the first position we have 1, 2, 3. In the second position we have Ahmed. In the third position we have 91 and the new line character. So what should I do? Before you split it, strip it like this. There we go. Line dot strip dot split. Line dot strip will take the line, strip it from the new line character. خلاص, remove the new line. Now you can split it. This way you remove the new line before extracting the data from the line. Let's read it again. Let's run it again. Here we go. The new line character is gone from the grades. فهمتوها? Is it clear, everyone? Yeah? What's not clear? Add a strip. What does the strip method do? Strip method removes white space characters. هذا من chapter 8 المفروض عليه quiz. Removes white space characters from the sides of the string. طيب, do you have a white space character? What are white space characters? Space, tab و new line. عندنا هنا new line في النهاية. عندنا عندنا line آخره new line. كل line آخره new line. I don't want the new line. النيو لاين هذا قاعد لازق في الجريد، فلما طبعت يحط الجريد بعدين ينزل سطر. So what should I do? I stripped it first, move the new line character, then I split it. Now you can split it. خلاص split it. يلا خذ لي هذا وهذا وهذا كل واحد بحاله. You get it now? Yeah? Any other questions? Any other questions? Okay. Very well. So these are the examples on records. Now, we need to start talking about exceptions, otherwise we won't have enough time for all of the quizzes, because we will also have a quiz on chapter 6. So we'll have 3 quizzes this week. Okay, everyone? Okay? Type exceptions. And yes, they may all be on Tuesday, all 3 of them. طيب. So what's an exception? An exception, an error that occurs while a program is running. Usually causes the program to abruptly halt. It crashes the program. Like what? You have seen so many errors. Like what? Index error, very good. If you try to access a list and then or a string or whatever in an incorrect index. Anything else? Key error. Key error. We saw that in dictionaries. Any other examples? من ساعة. Value error. طيب متى شفنا value error? When did we see value error? Yes, when you convert a string that does not have a valid value to an int or a float. Yes, you can have value error. Did you say something? Indeed.
I was talking with friend.
Okay. طيب, anything else? What if you try to open a file in read mode and that file does not exist? Scan an error. File not found. File not found error. Okay? What about, remember the first error I talked to you about? إيش كان هو? Division by zero. Remember division by zero error? So we have so many errors. Okay? طيب. We also have something called the traceback. What's a traceback? You see the error message? The red error message? We call it a traceback. Like, why is it called a traceback? Error message that gives information regarding line numbers that goes, so it traces back where did the exception happen? It gives you the line, and that's why we call it a traceback error message. It also indicates the type of the exception and a brief description of the error that caused the exception to be raised. Now, many exceptions can be prevented by careful coding, like division by zero مثلا, or index error. As long as you make sure you are using the correct index, or key error, as long as you make sure that the key actually exists in the dictionary, خلاص, there's no risk of having this error. For the zero division error, as long as you make sure that the second number is not zero, you can divide and the error will not happen. طيب. So here we go. So example input validation. You are reading the number from the user, you have to make sure that the number, and you are trying to divide something, you need to make sure that the second number is not a zero. This way you can prevent the zero division error from happening area. طيب. So usually it involves a simple decision concept, an if statement. Now the problem is some exceptions cannot be avoided by careful coding. Like what? Like what? I think that we have seen. طيب. Is there a method that checks, and again, now the input function always reads a string, صح? Always, regardless of what the user enters. Is there a method that checks if the user enters a float number? Is there? What is it? This digit only checks if it's all numbers. يعني, if the user adds a point, it will return false. Actually, is digit or is numeric from the string methods from chapter 8, they return true only if the entire string has only numbers. Only numbers. يعني, if the user tries to enter a negative number, it will not work. It will return false. A negative number, there is a minus sign. So, it will not work. So we don't have a method that checks if a string has a float value or has an int value. We only have is digit and is numeric. They check if the number is positive and integer. That's it. يعني, only numbers, only digits. طيب, what about, do you have a method that checks if the file exists before you try to open it? No. Well, there is a way, but it's a bit complicated. Okay? So if you ask the user for the file name, and then you try to open it in read mode, and the file does not exist, you will see file not found, error. So how can we prevent this? This is what we're trying to say. So here, we are learning that a lot of exceptions can be prevented by careful coding, make sure to check, but some exceptions cannot be prevented. That's why we need what we call an exception handler. What's an exception handler? From the name, it catches the exception. That's what we say. Catch the exception. It catches the exception and handles it so that it does not crash your code. So an exception handler code that responds when exceptions are raised. As soon as the exception happens, this code starts executing and prevents the program from crashing. In Python, meaning it's different in Java, in Python it is written as try except. Okay, see here the indentation is not correct. Make sure to fix it. So slide 24, we have try and except. They have to be in the same indentation, and then the statements here have to be the same indentation, like this. Here we go. Okay, make sure to fix this, okay? Type. So what's an exception handler in Python? Try except statement. Type. Now here, this is what we call the try suite or the try block. What do you put here? Statements that can potentially raise an exception. Yeah. What are you doing? You are trying to open a file in read mode, put it here. You are asking the user for the name of the file and then you're trying to open it, put it here. You are trying to convert a string to an int and you're asking the user for the string, put it here. So any code that may raise an exception, put it here. Type. Then we have except, exception name, then statements. The exception name, in the exception name, you put the name of the exception. What is it? What are you trying to catch? Value error, key error, file not found error, type error. What is it exactly that you're trying to catch? Most of the time we have multiple exceptions, exception handlers. And we say except مثلا value error, another one, except the key error, another one, except. فاهمين علي؟ This way you can catch multiple exceptions. Because most of the time, the code can raise more than one exception. And at the end, and this is a very good tip, at the end we usually have a general exception handler. What does a general exception handler mean? Yani you don't specify the name. You say except, that's it. A general exception handler will catch any exception. That's why make sure it is at the end. Actually, Python will not allow you to put it at the beginning because it's a general exception handler. If you put it in the beginning, خلاص, the other exception handlers are useless. Type. So again, the try suite, statements that can potentially raise an exception. Type the handler here. Inside the except is the handler. Statements contained in the except block. But what do you put here? Depends. Are you catching file not found error? Put here. Oh, invalid file name. We enter the name. There you go. Type. You are trying to catch what? Okay, the user is entering an invalid number and you are trying to convert it to an int. Oh, invalid number, make sure it's a float number. Okay, whatever it is that you need to happen, when you catch the exception, when you know the error happened, put it here. Type. Now what happens? What happens exactly? If the statement in the try suite raises an exception, so you put the statements here. If the exception actually happens, what is the next step? If the exception is specified in the except clause, if the exception here that you specified is the exception that happened. يعني مثلا you say except file error exception, file not found error exception, okay? And actually file not found error happened. This handler will catch it. Okay? يعني the handler will only catch the exception that is provided here. Unless it's a general handler, it will catch everything. But if a different exception happened, خلاص it will not catch it. It will not catch it, then your code will crash. طيب ماشي. صار file not found exception ومسكنا file not found exception. Now what? The program will jump, the execution will jump here, inside here, it will start executing. So if the exception is specified in the except clause, the handler immediately following the except clause executes. وبعدين, and then the program will continue after the try except, no problems, no crashing. And this is the goal, no crashing. طيب, if the exception that happened is not specified here, can you catch it? No. Unless it's a general exception handler, yes, it can catch everything. If the exception is not specified, you cannot catch it, so your code will crash. Here we go. For other exceptions, the program will halt with traceback error message. طيب, if no exception, إذا أصلاً ما صار عادي, اليوزر أعطاني file name and the file exists and everything is good, or maybe the user, we are trying to convert a string to an int and the user put a valid value, everything is good. خلاص, no exception, excellent. طيب, what about the exception handler? Skipped. The code in the exception handler is skipped if no exception is raised. Yes.
You just put an empty exception.
Yes, that's a general exception handler. It can catch any exception.
More than one.
Yes, it can catch any exception. Any exception. Okay? طيب. Next time, inshallah, I'm not going to repeat this explanation. سامعين? I'm going to give you the example straight away. That's why you have to study. سامعين يا تحى؟ سامعين؟ How many quizzes do we have this week? 3. On which chapters? 8, 9, 6. مين قال 7؟ مين تحفة اللي قال 7؟ Okay, so 8, 9, and 6. And yes, we can have all of them on Tuesday. Alright, everyone? Actually, if we have all of them on Tuesday and then we finish, we're done with our curriculum. Okay? Yeah, let's be ready, inshallah, for Tuesday. I'll see you all on Tuesday, inshallah. Yeah.